This conference will now be recorded.
Hello, I'm Paul Huffman. I'm the Census and Redistricting Coordinator for the League of Women Voters of Minnesota. I'm here today with the Tuesday timely topic for April 21st. Today, we're going to talk about the census, an update on the schedule and the impacts of that schedule change of the census, and also talk about redistricting. As many of you may be aware, there were significant announcements from the Commerce Department and the Census Bureau on Monday, April 13th. About a planned change to the schedule for completing the census and a request to change some of the downstream impacts on redistricting and reapportionment. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What I want to start off with first is a discussion of where we stand with the census in Minnesota. What you see is the map as of today for response nationwide. What this shows is no total response, self-response through phone, online, and primarily, and then some paper response on the census, 50.7%. Minnesota leading the way at 60.6%. Wisconsin's a little bit behind at 57%. And what you can see within Minnesota, we'll pull this up by county, is the darkest blue are the areas with the highest response rate. The highest response right now is in Carver County with 70.2%, followed by Scott County at 69.9%, and in Washington County at 69.1%. The dark brown is the areas with the lowest response rates. You can see right now Cook County at 15.7% is far and away the lowest. Monoman at 18.0%, Cass at 25.7%, and Aiken at 28.2%, and then Lake of the Woods in far north in Minnesota is 24.7%. So a couple of areas where we could be doing better, but overall doing well as a state and continuing to work toward this. And we'll talk more about what else can be done and what you can do to help move us forward as a state. With the next thing is the census. As I mentioned, there was an announcement last Monday from the Census Bureau and the Commerce Department on extending census activity significantly. The original schedule was that field offices were going to begin their peak activity on June 1st and on March 1st, excuse me. That's now been extended to June 1st. The self-response for all of us is now extended through October 31st. That was originally have been done about August 1st. And then the field count of non-respondents, that's households who haven't responded, will now start on August 11th, and it previously was going to be May 13th. So we can see that that there's been a significant slide, about 4 months in the overall census, and this is really driven by COVID-19. Areas where people have been asked to stay at home or shelter in place to prevent the spread of the virus. Just a reminder, and I mentioned this probably 3 weeks ago, the Census Bureau is following up with colleges and universities to make sure all students are counted and are continuing to work with group quarters administrators and social service providers. And the last thing on this list is delays are such that legally required timelines cannot be met. And so the question about the legally required timelines, I'll get to in a moment. The reminder on relocation due to COVID-19, anyone who's been temporarily relocated due to COVID-19 should still respond to the census based on where they would normally be living as of April 1st. That responsibility for college and university students who would have been in a dormitory is still with the university, and the Census Bureau is following up. For all others, if you have relocated temporarily due to COVID-19, either to your own health or to be with family or the conditions where you would normally live, you still should be counted where you would normally have been living on April 1st, particularly if you plan to return there, in the near term. So just a reminder of that. The timeline, what I wanted to talk about is this reflects the timeline as it exists today for the census. The first things on this list, the notifications to respond went out in late March, and all of us should have gotten that by now. The official census day doesn't change. April 1st is the date upon which we look at where people lived on that date. And then census takers, enumerators going into the field. Now that had been scheduled to be in May. That's now in August. That's a 3-month delay. And that will be extended until the end of October. The next couple of items were to be done in the end of 2020 and early 2021. The Commerce Department and Census Bureau are proposing that the Census Director delivers the apportionment count to the President by April 30th, and that's the apportionment data that says which states get how many representatives. That date is required by law. That's the Apportionment Act of 1929 requires that to be by the end of December. This will require an act of Congress to change. So that discussion is in progress right now. By mid-May, 2 weeks after being provided that data, the President is required to provide to the House of Representatives census counts for each state and the number of representatives each state is entitled to. Right now, there's no authority to the President to change that data. It's really a pass-through. And then within about 10 days of that date, the clerk of the House of Representatives informs the states of this number so that the states can then go about their apportionment. As you may be aware, if you look down this list, the Census Bureau delivers final census data at the end of July. Normally, the states begin their apportionment activities based on those initial notifications, which normally would have been received in January. And then normally by the end of March or early April, the states would have gotten their final census data. Now they're not going to get that to July. Where that's really important for us in Minnesota is, in all states, is that the legislatures are normally required by the state laws or constitutions of those states to complete redistricting based on the census data. The specific words in the Minnesota Constitution says that in the next legislative session, after enumeration of population by the U.S. government, then the legislature is required to perform redistricting. Since the enumeration will technically be done in January, potentially, and then that done, provided the President in April, the question then is, can we wait until the 2022 legislative session to do redistricting, or is that required in 2021? And if it isn't done until 2022, how does that impact 2022 elections, primaries, all of that? That discussion is just beginning in the legislature, and expect to hear more on that. So for us in the League of Women Voters, our focus has been on passing legislation in this session and potentially having a constitutional amendment to be approved this fall by the voters in order to have a independent commission perform redistricting for Minnesota. With the focus on COVID-19 and bonding and bipartisan legislation in this legislative session, there's been limited opportunity to talk about redistricting, given again that and the roughly 1 month period that the legislature's been out of session or been in limited session. So we are reassessing our strategies for that. So expect to hear more, but this is going to impact redistricting. It's going to, within Minnesota, it's going to impact potentially having a special session legislature. It impacts when and how we have primaries potentially in 2022. And it also impacts our communication, our strategy for ensuring we get a fair count and fair maps in Minnesota for the next round of redistricting. So this is going to be very disruptive for all states having that delay. There are states with 2021 legislative elections. So that's also going to be something that's going to be a significant challenge. So I just want to make sure you are aware of what those changes are. Some references that you can look at, just and many of these are linked already on our Census action kit or issue summary, the 2020 census operational adjustments. This is a web page and has a PDF with it of the changes to the schedule, the announcement, the press release from the Department of Commerce on the changes and what that is based on. Then finally, because this is a recurring question, there's a video, a very good video from the Census Bureau on the 2020 census and what college students need to know. And so to understand where they should be counted. So I really highly recommend that. Again, these are all linked on our action kit. And I do highly recommend to you the action kit and the issue summary and your references attached to that. We have started annotating. Kristen Smith, our communications manager, has got dots beside each item that's new on our action kit, and there are a number of items that are new in the action kit for the census. And I appreciate your attention to that. We will have more information on the redistricting process and our engagement on that here in the near term. One other thing I want to just bring to your attention is census letters to the editors. With the delay in completing the census, the focus on COVID-19, we think it's important to highlight to our communities the importance of the census and completing the census. So I'd like to encourage you to look at those letters to the editor. We do have those on our webpage, and I'll show you right now where those are in our census action kit. So you can see there on the right the LTEs templates. That is our action kit. So there's 2 of them. Feel free to modify that as you wish to suit your circumstance and your community. So the focus is, how do you motivate the community? We are looking for other things that we can provide to members in order to engage the community. With this delay in the census, I was on a call late last week with our Minnesota Census Partnership and the coordinating team members for that. Many nonprofits had planned all their resources and engagement around the near-term support of field activities in response to the census. This delay causes them a lot of uncertainty, as well as the pivot of their resources to respond to COVID-19, which is having a significant impact in many communities. So I just want to bring that to your attention. What we may be able to do, a question I had asked me last night in a conference with one of the local leagues, is what can we do locally? One is to encourage your friends and family, people you know, to respond to the census if they haven't already. The second thing you can do is, if you're a part of a complete count committee, identify through that complete count committee what methods there may be to reach out to those in the community by phone or by social media or other methods. Finally, what I'll recommend is through the some of our weekly Minnesota League of Women Voters updates, there have been some mentions of a phone bank that the Minnesota State Demographic Center is developing, and that will be an opportunity for members of the league to participate in those phone banks to reach out to some of those hard to reach communities and that are historically undercounted. So we want to encourage you to look for those opportunities. If you have other suggestions or other questions, please contact me by email at phuffman@lwvmn.org, and encourage you to keep those questions coming. I'll be back next week with an update on redistricting. We'll focus on the people aspect of that. If you recall from a couple of weeks ago, I talked about the 3 parts: people, the principles, and the process. I talked about the process, so I'll talk about the people aspect. Who does redistricting? How does it work in Minnesota? How could it work? And so you're better informed and able to articulate those principles to your representatives and to your friends and other members of the public. I also want to encourage you to ask or let me know if you have opportunity for either talking to your local league through a video conference about redistricting or census, or if there's some opportunity to engage members of the community. I do have a license for the GoToMeeting, and we dry ran this last night, as I mentioned, with the Woodbury Cottage Grove area league, and it worked very well. And so this is an opportunity to continue reaching out to the community, building those connections through this media. So again, thanks very much, and I appreciate your time and attention and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.